Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
Like to make comments?
No, I'm good. Sorry, I don't know.
Sure, sorry about that. I couldn't find that unmute. So, I just want to say hi, everybody. I'm excited to join the commission. If there's anything I can do, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just sit here and listen for this first one. And again, I don't know. I think Jake, when you have your commission meetings, maybe gave a council update every meeting, or am I wrong about that?
Correct, you did.
Do you still want me to do that going forward, or how do you want to handle that?
I'll pass that to Emily and the future chair, but I would assume yes.
Okay.
I'm just, you got some big shoes to fill. You got feet big enough to fill those shoes?
What are they doing, Mike?
First, next order of business is a public hearing, the zoning ordinance for a text amendment on the parking requirements for furniture stores. Emily Shiley, if you have presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Emily Shively. I'm the Oakdale City Planner. And the item that you have before you this evening is a request for a zoning ordinance text amendment. This is a request to change policy, to change law, and it would apply throughout the city. I'm going to share my screen. So everyone can see this. They're familiar with the zoning pyramid. So we're talking about the zoning, which is a discretionary action that builds on the comprehensive plan. So again, amending the zoning ordinance is a policy action that must be consistent with the comprehensive plan goals and policies, must be consistent with the other zoning ordinance provisions, and must consider the potential impact on other land uses and infrastructure systems. The zoning ordinance text amendment before you tonight is a request to change the parking requirements for a furniture store use and has been requested by Home Furniture. Home intends to purchase and remodel the former theater building at 1188 Helmo Avenue North to move their showroom from Woodbury to Oakdale. And now I'll show that location map that was in your packets. And so this area that's been highlighted is the parcel where that home is interested in purchasing. Because last month, we talked about the Animal Emergency and Referral Center of Minnesota building a new building on this portion of the theater site. So there's a subdivision where the animal clinic has their own parcel and associated parking, and then Home Furniture is interested in purchasing the old theater building and the associated parking there. This parcel is guided commercial in our 2040 comprehensive plan and is zoned C2 community commercial. Furniture stores are a permitted use in the C2 Community Commercial Zoning District and are considered a retail use for the purposes of determining parking requirements. Parking requirements are intended to ensure that sufficient off-street parking is provided for a use so as not to cause parking to spill over and impact adjacent businesses, residential neighborhoods, affect traffic and circulation when roads are not designed for accommodating on-street parking, and also to ensure that a business has sufficient parking to occupy the building and be successful. Home is requesting a zoning ordinance text amendment that would reduce the number of parking stalls required for furniture stores compared to the city's requirement for retail uses, based on observations at their other stores over time. And they included quite a bit of information about that in your packets. While Home's focus is on this 1188 Helmo Avenue North property, a zoning ordinance text amendment would be applicable to a furniture store use in any C2 community commercial zoning district in Oakdale. So the citywide impact of the proposed change must be considered. However, we'll look at this particular site as an example. So Oakdale's current retail parking requirement is one space for each 200 square feet of floor area. The old theater building right here is approximately 98,000 square feet, and the parcel has 500 parking spaces. So there's parking on the west side, on the east side, and then this array of parking to the south. So that site right now has sufficient parking under the current ordinance for a conversion of the building to any retail use, such as a furniture store. However, Home states that they do not need that much parking for their operations, and there would be a large amount of unused parking on the site. So if the ordinance were changed to require less parking, Home would be interested in expanding the building to fill in. Right now, this is kind of a covered entry. If you've been to the old theater site, you kind of walk under these covered areas, but they'd fill in this U shape of the building and then add a second floor. So that would end up with a total of about 150,000 square feet in the building. So they would also like to create a new parcel for development on the unused parking area if this parking change is approved. So continuing with this example, if Home's request was approved, a 150,000 square foot building would require a total of 195 parking spaces. So that would leave 305 parking spaces unused for possible conversion to an approximately 2-acre pad site. And so that would be about this much area, kind of roughly a little bit more than half of the parking here would be unused and could be a future pad site. If Home creates a pad site on those 305 unused parking spaces, and that would then eliminate that extra parking, excuse me, the consequence would be that there would only be enough parking remaining on the site to accommodate about 40,800 square feet of retail in the building. If it was to be a retail use in the future at our retail parking standard. So you take 195 parking spaces, multiply that by the 200 parking spaces, 200 square feet per parking space, you end up with that 40,800 square feet. So that means that over 2/3 of the building, about 109,000 square feet, would not have enough parking to serve most other retail uses and may result in the building becoming largely unusable. So the problem with reducing the parking as requested and allowing the pad development is that if Home leaves the site in the future, there would not be enough parking on the property for most other retail uses to reuse the building, as they would need that one space per 200 square feet, the existing retail parking standard. So potentially, either the building would need to be torn down or a large portion of the building would be unusable due to a lack of parking. So staff does acknowledge that furniture stores may require less parking than other retail uses, as they sell large, expensive items that are only purchased occasionally. However, Oakdale does not have any furniture stores that have less parking than other retail uses, and staff hasn't verified Home's data for accuracy or against other furniture store businesses to determine how it would compare in order to conclude that the standard they propose will not create parking issues. So given the fact that furniture stores may require less parking, but to think about not creating a significant issue potentially in the future, staff is proposing an alternative change to the parking standard that would allow Home to add square footage to the theater building, but would not allow for pad site for new development at this time. This would allow Home Furniture to come to Oakdale, design the building how they would like, and see how the parking actually operates at this location, and allow some more time for the city to consider the impacts of creating a pad site on the property. So staff is proposing an alternative that would reduce the parking requirement for furniture stores from 1 space per 200 square feet to 1 space per 325 square feet. So under this alternative, going back to our example again, if Home wants to remodel the theater building, to add a second floor, fill in that U space, the resulting 150,000 square foot building would require 462 spaces, 38 spaces left over. So that amount of extra parking isn't enough to create a pad site. This option preserves 500 spaces on the site for future retail uses, but it should be noted that there still might be up to 50,000 square feet in the building that wouldn't have enough parking. However, that's still more of the building that has access to sufficient parking than the Home option and may better accommodate future retail uses in the building. So this option would allow Home to remodel the building to create the showroom that they want. This also gives the city more time to consider the pros and cons of further reducing parking to create pad site and study the citywide impacts of that change. the Planning Commission and City Council could consider further modifications in the future if there is new information justifying a change. So to conclude, the options presented for the Planning Commission to discuss this evening are first to recommend approval of the request from Home to allow expansion of the theater site and possible future pad site development. The other option is to recommend approval of the staff alternative that would allow Home to build out the theater building but not create a pad site at this time. Staff is recommending option B, which lets Home Furniture occupy and expand the building, but does not create potential unintended consequences of limiting other retail uses in the building in the future. So this allows still for future consideration of pad site development when all of the impacts are known and possible issues addressed. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions the commission may have, and representatives from Home Furniture are also present.
I have one question. Down on the south side, there's, I think it used to be a Discovery Child Care Center or some kind of child care center. Does it participate in the parking here at all?
So it is still in use, and their parcel includes just this first row of parking right there to serve their business.
So it's outside of their scope of what we're looking at.
It is, yep. They have a cross-access agreement on this parcel, so they can use the drive aisles to get through the site and to and from their parking.
And just to reiterate what I believe you said is that either of these options would give Home the ability to build exactly what they wish to build on the site for their primary building without any restrictions on that step.
It would allow them to go up to 150 square feet in the building, yep. And it would even, if they've considered incorporating some other retail tenants that they would sublease to, and any of those retail tenants would need the 1 per 200. And so there's some flexibility to allow for a little bit of just other regular retail uses and then furniture stores. So just kind of depending on what that mix is, we think that there's enough flexibility with the parking that staff is recommending to allow for that.
Anyone else have any questions for Emma at this point?
I do. I have a question. Emily, a question I have is, in your 2040 comp plan, is there a call for kind of reducing the amount of required parking, given that we're moving toward a time where parking may be sort of obsolete because, you know, people would be either having ride sharing or public transit, or maybe sort of long-term, maybe self-driving vehicles? Is there a call for anything like that?
That's a great question. Our comprehensive plan does not have any policies right now that call for reducing parking or to study that issue. The Helmo station has parking maximums. So that is the transit-oriented development that the city is planning for with the new Gold Line bus rapid transit near 4th Street and Helmo. And so there, we are intentionally creating a walkable neighborhood with small blocks, sidewalks, trails, and a mix of uses to sort of create that walkable community centered around the new transit station that will be there. So not only are we providing that transit facility, but also the other supports that help reduce vehicle usage. This location is not currently served by transit. It does not have a good bicycle and pedestrian system. It's not located in the midst of a higher density walkable neighborhood. So this isn't a location that would necessarily have those other attributes that would help reduce parking.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
And your recommendation, staff recommendation, is to change the requirement from 200 square feet per space to 300 just for furniture stores, right?
That's correct.
No, period, okay. And currently there aren't any other than Home.
Well, yeah, there's Home Goods, which is in a PUD down in Oakdale Village. but that's the only other sort of home furnishings specific store.
That be like the Dock 86 though? Isn't that part of that too?
Dock 86 is a brand of home furniture, but they're not currently located in Oakdale.
But are they planning that here?
If there aren't any more questions for me and we want to turn it over to the applicant, I think that's something that they could address.
Okay, are there any other questions? Call it any representative from Home Furnishing who would like to comment?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, oh, I need to open the public hearing as well, so go ahead now.
All right. Are you ready for me?
Yes, I am.
All right. This is my first Zoom call, so I'm a little old school. I'm Wayne Johansson. I'm the founder and one of the partners of Home Furniture. With me tonight is John Pierce. He's heads up our real estate construction development. I've got about 4 pages to read here, and I don't know, it might be easier if anybody had questions, if they wanted to interrupt me, or should I just go through the whole thing and at the end take notes, or I can do it either way. So I'm going to give you a brief description of our company. We're locally owned home furnishings retailer and real estate developer, headquartered
Do you want
in
me
Blue
to-
Rapids with 1,200 associates, most of whom work in the Twin Cities metro area.
Do you want me to
We have an additional 9 locations outside of Minnesota, outside of the
just stop sharing so
metro
that
area,
he's talking?
South Dakota, Iowa,
Because he's going to have something for me to put up as
Wisconsin,
well.
Minnesota as well. We own and operate roughly 3 million square feet of real estate, with over
there a different
2,500 of that
view that I
for our
could do?
furniture operations. We're established in
This one?
1973 with 20 presence retailing since 76. We operate under the following multiple brands and are all generally advertised separately. Home Furniture, Dock 86, Gabbard's Furniture, Sleep Express, Home Floors, Seasonal Concepts. We have specially trained staff operate each brand to ensure high quality, knowledgeable sales associates to be with our customers. In the proposed Oakdale development, we would have every single
I'm
one
not
of
sure
the
how to do that.
brands except for Gabbard's, so that would be Dock 86, every one of our other brands. We own 100% of all our retail properties except for the Woodbury building, where we've been for 23 years. We are looking to make
Yeah, it
Oakdale
doesn't
our
change anything up there.
metro
Not up
location.
there. They must not be
Woodbury
using it.
showroom is going to be impacted by the Metro Gold Line that you just talked about, and it's also not expandable. And so we really don't know what's going to happen with that property, and we are kind of forced into looking at alternatives. Let's see, and we do want a larger showroom, as Emily stated. Home is the 35th largest furniture retailer in the United States by volume. Home locations rank in the top 10% in size, giving our Minneapolis-St. Paul customers one of the most unique, largest shopping experience our industry offers. Home has a philanthropic culture. We are heavily involved with 2 local charities, in particular, Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, and we lost our mother to ovarian cancer, so we're very involved in the Minnesota Ovarian Cancer Alliance. We sponsor events around each of these charities here and have raised over $10 million between our donations and our fundraisers. We're also involved with Ronald McDonald House, Achievement, Youth Baseball, Basketball, Boys and Girls Clubs, among many others. Home owners have been recognized nationally by the Anti-Defamation League, winners of the Minnesota and Dakota's Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and have been recognized as leaders by local business journals. I want to say that we are very excited about the potential for this site. We feel that we are the perfect user for this property. It's a very unique property. We will rejuvenate this property as we have several others recently in the Twin Cities if we are given the opportunity to do so. I was going to have one
You get that
slide.
message?
Emily, do you have that?
Yep, I'm going to do
We have one slide that we can put up.
a new share
Last
here.
project we did. On the top left, this is the Kohl's building in Brooklyn Center. It was terrible. That's actually that black stuff that's mold coming off the building and stuff. And right below that's our new home furniture in Brooklyn Center. Above right is our Bloomington store. You can see one of our brands there, Seasonal Concept, that had a home furniture in it as well, most of our other brands. If you go down, you'll see the next photo is another view of that property. It was getting very tired and very old. There was also a non-conforming use budget truck rental that was terrible, and the city had been trying to get rid of it for many years. We worked with the city of Bloomington on that project, and that's the results. One of the views is from our south side, our entrance side, and the other's from 494. So that's the type of development we do. Today you're tasked with determining if furniture should be allowed to have a lower parking ratio than general retail, which is 1 per 200 feet of gross retail space. Staff has put two options before you. Our request, which is the same code as used in Apple Valley, provides double what we need in our peak times of the year and triple what we need on an average Saturday. Staff recommendation limits us to about 160,000 total square feet that we are proposing to build by adding a second level and filling in the interior of the theater where the entrance areas are. That could go up a little bit, okay? The front 6 theaters we're looking at renting out. The smallest theaters where the building is at lower height, and we're looking at having a couple tenants there. This is just a little bit bigger than what we need. Those could be 2-level, they're tall enough to be 2 levels. So this building could go up to a total of 170,000 feet. We're looking at occupying about 146,000 feet of that. So if you look at our formula, we would be requiring 200 parking spaces for our 146,000 feet roughly. Depending on what happened with the balance of that, which would be subject to the other codes, as Emily has stated, the 1 per 325 feet might not be enough for us to even do our initial building. So that's one concern that we have. Most of the Twin Cities market and other communities where we operate have separate long-established parking requirement codes, separate codes for large ticket retail such as home furnishings, appliances, and flooring stores. That makes it easy to do business. Communities that don't, we either work with the cities to adapt a separate parking formula as we recently did in Bloomington, or we are able to easily get a practical variance. I can't recall any other community that has a separate furniture code being as low as 1 per 325 square feet. We also want to make sure that everyone here understands that we are the ones taking on 100% of the risk if this business were ever to fail as a furniture store. We're going to own it, we're going to build it, we're going to be the tenant. We aren't asking for any tax increment financing or any other financial considerations from the city of Oakdale. We are doing this with our eyes wide open to the financial risk involved, just as we recently did in Bloomington. Bloomington, in 2020, we finished our flagship 212,000-foot furniture showroom, replacing a 106,000-foot building. Those are the ones that are on the screen right now. With that, the 106,000 square foot building included us and also Golf Galaxy. That had 300 parking spaces total. Our new building has 212,000 square feet with the same 300 parking spaces. Bloomington did an extensive study on parking ratios. We have 20 years of data. We have a lot of information. Total Bloomington site is smaller than the Oakdale site. We have a 38-year history in this location that started out with a 12,000-foot waterbed store. You may remember Water Bedroom Man. That was us. We worked closely with city staff on parking codes to accomplish this. Sometimes we had our differences of opinions and views with the planners Nick Johnson and Londell Peace, but at the end of the day, we found a way was finished, we ended up tearing down 3 50 to 6-year-old eyesores and replaced them with the buildings on the screen that you're looking at now. Gabbard's, a Home Furniture, and a Dock 86, along with every other one of our brands. As part of the process, we relocated the non-conforming budgeted day for the truck rental into a new building, made the 494 corridor a more visibly attractive place. At the end of the day, we think the results speak for themselves. Bloomington had been trying to get rid of budget truck rental there at that site for 20 years. So it worked, it was a win-win. If we were following Oakdale's parking codes in Bloomington, we would need 1,060 parking spaces per the current code. If we use the revised code that they're proposing, we would need 600 new parking spaces for our this open. Our 354,000 square foot headquarters, showroom, and distribution center in Coon Rapids has 373 total parking spaces. We have 368 employees. We have an additional 60 contract delivered. We're a total of over 400 staff in that one building. Plus, we have customers that use the parking. We've never had a parking problem in that building. We have room for additional spaces, and we've never had to put them in because we don't need them. It meets their code. We were following Oakdale's parking codes in Coon Rapids. We would need about 900 spaces. Between Bloomington and Coon Rapids, that would be 10 acres of unproductive asphalt parking lots. This is not what you call being green. Everyone thinks Tesla is great, but we can do much better in our own backyards. Another item I would like to bring up is that we would retrofit the entire project to the most efficient LEDs on the market. Our 212,000 square foot new Bloomington showroom uses less utilities than our previous 85,000 feet that we occupied on the same space. Over 60% less carbon footprint per square foot. I want to discuss a little bit what our actual customer employee counts are. We have a spreadsheet in your packet. If you go to the second to the last page, see the spreadsheet? Go to the, let's see here. Go to the bottom row of that page in the middle. You'll see that on Saturdays, our average customer, our peak time of the day is 37 customer cars at any given time. That's our average at 2 to 3 p.m. on Saturday. If you go to 10 o'clock in the morning, it's 16, and later in the day, it gets to be low again. We have tracked this for 20 years. Our average door swings by location, by customer. We know every hour I can take you to our computer systems and you can say, show me this hour, this day, this month, and I can pull it up and I can show you that data. We are very on top of our customers. So our, on that, let's see here, I lost my spot. All right, so with the 500 spaces in the building, we would have on that 37 on a Saturday in the middle of the afternoon, we would have about 25 staff on top of that. That means other than any other retail we have on the site, on our busiest day of the week, which is typically a Saturday, we would have about 438 of those 500 parking spaces be empty. If you go to a weekday, a Monday through Friday, average, we would have about 470 to 500 parking spaces be empty. Demonstrate the difference between, so you're asking me, that's our Woodbury numbers. So you're asking me, if we had a larger store, what would those numbers change by? So what I'm going to compare for you is our 170,000 square foot Plymouth showroom to our 80,000 foot Woodbury showroom. It's over twice the size. On all of our locations, shopping in general, furniture as well, but all categories of shopping have been impacted. People are doing most of their research and a lot of their buying online. What's happened in our business is that our traffic counts are down over 50% from 20 years ago. Our Woodbury store in 2003 had 239,000 door swings. Okay, that's not cars, that's door swings. In 2019, instead of 239,000, we had 106,000. We were down 55% door swing on that location. That equates to 47,700 total customer cars for the year, or an average of 130 cars on a daily basis. So for our whole day on the average, we use 130 spaces. Our Plymouth store, want to compare that 2019 number is 123,000 door swings compared to 106. The store that's over twice as large only gets 15% more traffic. That's because it's customers, they're coming in, they're looking what they want on the internet, and they're doing their shopping, and what happens is we get larger average tickets with a larger store. Our peak, when I said before, we can measure our peak hours. Our 3 largest hours in the Plymouth store in 2019, I'm not counting anything from 2020 because COVID has reduced our counts and it wouldn't be a fair number. Labor Day of 2019 in Plymouth, our peak hour was 2 to 3 p.m. and we would have had 65 cars in the lot that day. Black Friday, our peak hour was 1 to 2 p.m. and that day we would have had 73 cars average in the hour, that hour. Memorial Day from 3 to 4 p.m. was our biggest spike of the year in that store. We had 87 cars on average from 3 to 4 p.m. We have about 2 to 1 customer to employee ratio on average peak days. On a peak hour like that, it wouldn't be that high. So on that day, in Memorial Day, in that 1 hour of the day, we might have gotten up to needing 120 parking spaces for that 1 hour. Our maximum parking spaces needed in Plymouth was 120. The Apple Valley Code that we're proposing to use in Oakdale would require 240 parking spaces if we did a 170,000 foot store, the equivalent of Plymouth store. The Oakdale staff recommendation that they're recommending right now would be 522 parking spaces. Maximum on the busiest hour, the busiest day would be, we actually have to tell our employees to park in front of the store to make it look like we're busy, because that's the nature of our business. It's just not parking intensive. So let's talk about this building in another vein. We did list some things. If you go to the very last page, we listed some conforming items that this building could be repurposed to if our furniture store failed. Not counting on, we haven't had any failures, but who knows, right? It could be automotive and other vehicle sales. It could be a large indoor RV type place, indoor vehicles. It could be indoor boats, I think, is allowed and things like that. It could be exercise clubs, things like that are larger facilities, mini golf. It could be an indoor, and we've looked at some of the options that we would have because as the owners of the building, we do say what happens if we ever lost people buying furniture, which we don't think will happen. They have a tendency to want to give it the butt test. They'll look at it online, but you cannot tell comfort online, and you can't tell fabrics online, and you cannot tell finishes, things like that. It's very difficult to discern those things, and it's also very another to have furniture delivered with common carriers that have a tendency to break it up. So we don't think that the internet's going to take our business away. As a matter of fact, it's going to grow. Let's talk about the site. Let's say if we closed down the furniture store. Let's talk about what are the other big box retailers that could put parking pressure on this. The site isn't big enough for a Walmart, a Target, a Costco, a Sam's, a Menards, a Home Depot. It is big enough for maybe a Cub or a Hy-Vee, but can you imagine them trying to do business out of that theater building? I think that unless something is repurposed, that building's going to be torn down if it doesn't work for us. So why not give it a shot now, and then later on, if it had to be torn down, it had to be torn down. Our past includes many discarded buildings. Our Plymouth store, used to be our largest store, was a cold storage unit that stored meat. We went in and revamped that and redid it. Our Brooklyn Center was a cold store that was abandoned for 5 years and sat empty. That's why the plaster on the building was falling off. We had to restock it, but we had to take 100% of that off. Rochester, we had a Carson Perry Scott store that had been closed for 8 years that we brought back to life. In Sioux Falls, we had a grocery store that went out of business that we expanded and did. We've done 3 Yonkers department stores, and we've done a Gander Mountain. We are used to doing distressed property and turning it around. That's over half of our properties. That's how they got to us. Like we said earlier, we understand the financial risk of a building, that someday this building might need to be torn down and the site redeveloped. That is what we do, and we're not afraid of this, as we demonstrated in Bloomington. We tore that buildings down and built a new building, and if our building does not work there, we would have to tear that down because it's not a conforming use with that size of parking. Please approve our request so we can best develop the property successfully. The only thing you're approving is the reduced parking for the furniture portion of the building. Any other parts of the building or pad sites would have to be conforming uses for one. They would have to follow the parking code of the city for 2. So the only thing we're talking about here is big ticket retail, which we've demonstrated we do not need this parking for that. Closing, I want to say that we anticipated having parking and sign issues resolved in December so that we could be doing construction or structural and architectural drawings at this point in time. And start doing interior demo in March and April. These drawings are critical for us to getting our steel ordered and closing the building up before next winter. When we first met with Bob and Emily in February, we indicated and explained specifically our needs that haven't really changed. On March 10th, they spelled out the process that they said would work with us to get it rezoned or amended or all the different things that had to happen. The following week, COVID-19 hit, and we voluntarily closed all of our showrooms ahead of the state mandates for the safety of our staff and customers. The next few months, as you can imagine, we were 100% consumed with COVID-related issues related to keeping our employees, customers, and showrooms safe. We were also closing the Gabbard store. We were also finishing up this new construction in Bloomington, and we had a new store in Eau Claire. All this was on our plate at the same time. After we finally got back on track in early fall and signed a new purchase agreement with the seller, as the old one had expired. Shortly after that, we found out ADRC, our new neighbors, needed additional parking because they were doubling the size of their building. We worked with the seller and ADRC to reduce our footprint by the additional planning for that parking. We immediately began working on our new submittal for parking and sign needs that we could submit in November 2 for the December planning and council meetings. At Emily's suggestion, John moved the request for signs from our November 2nd submittal because Oakdale would have their new requirements determined by December for the type of buildings we have. Now we find out that it will be March or April at the earliest for these to be done. We need our project to keep moving. We resubmitted our sign request, and hopefully we'll be able to hear that on our early February meeting, and you'll get a recommendation, and we can get it approved at the February council meetings. We can move forward with our project. Right now, we are dead in the water. We cannot do this project without concessions on the signage as well as the parking. I thank you, and any questions, I know this stuff like the back of my hand.
Thank you, sir. Do you have another speaker on your behalf?
No.
Okay.
John doesn't have anything, I don't think, do you, John?
Nope, I think you touched on all the topics we wanted to.
Thank you, sir. Your speech should give me a couple of questions. One of them was, in light of what I had asked earlier, you said that your current plans weren't current plans for building the building as it is, without the consideration for the other pad site, wouldn't be allowed by the 325 limit.
Potentially not, because, okay, so what we're looking at is all the tall, all right, so, and we're not allowed any graphics here, we don't have any presentations, so it's very difficult to say this. Where the current theater is now, where the entry, have all of you been over there? You know the theater building?
I used to go to movies there, yes.
There's a 13,000 square foot area where they used to stage people to go into the movie. It has some canopies over it and things like that. We're gonna square that off, and that'll be the main entrance into the home, Dock 86, all of our, three theaters on both sides of that are small theaters. They have a lot of walls in them. That's gonna be the most difficult part of the theater to demo, because it's not tall enough for us to do 2 levels. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna walk in that first area that's outside currently, and that's gonna be the entrance into our store area. Then you're gonna get into the middle of the building, which is now where the entrance is, where you would go into the concessions area. That will be, all that will be like 30-foot tall, open spaces. And then when you're in that concessions area, if you look around it, there's 14 of the larger theaters that are very tall. That building stack goes up in height 38 feet partway back. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna get into that concession area, which is gonna be the middle of our store, and you're gonna see 2 levels surrounding that whole thing with a big glass elevator, stairwells, and that's what we're looking to do. The front on both sides of the theater, there's that entrance, there's about 7,500 square feet. Okay, those we're looking, it's gonna be bigger than what we need to do a dock, a home, and all those other categories. So what we're looking to do is rent out some of those spaces. It'd be great to get some similar type uses, let's say a hot tub store or something like that, or something that is a big ticket retail as well. But we don't know what that tenant would be yet at this point in time. We're anticipating that those would be, depending, it could be a restaurant, it could be a restaurant with a mezzanine or something like that. So we're looking at that part of the project. Could be, if you take that into the 200 square feet per space, we may not have enough with the 325. We need and to just even build the basic building.
Well,
That's the dilemma that we have, is we may not be able to build the first phase with that number. If that number was 375 or 400, it would get there, but as it is right now at 325, that has the potential of not being enough. As an example, we had 7,500 feet of retail on each side, that's 15,000 times, that's 75 parking spaces that we have. Take the 100 don't know who our tenant, that's the problem. We don't know who our tenant's gonna be. That, we have to go to market, and it's the same as the pad site. Let's say that we find another user that's low parking, just like ours on the main part of the building. That would mean if we're at 146,000 square feet of furniture and went up to 160, that would be about 215 parking spaces under the formula that we presented. Way more than we need. And that would allow for pad site out at the other end, getting closer to the daycare. The other thing, what you have to understand is most other uses, what could this pad site be? It could be a professional office building, it could be possibly a hotel pad site, it could be a small retail. Most of the uses are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 users. That's when we're dead. I mean, our business is in the evenings and weekends. So, regardless, it would be complementary in my opinion. But we don't even need half of what the proposal that we made, the 400 and 800. That's less than half of what we will ever. It's double what we will ever need ourselves on our busiest hours of the year. I don't think we were being aggressive with this. Coon Rapids, I think, is 1 per 1,000. There's a lot of cities that are a lot greater. Bloomington one, they took the new parking standards and they just extensively researched. And if we took those standards and applied them to this building, we would need, I think, the same 300 spaces that we use now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Jay Anthony. Perhaps your screens identify me as Cindy. That's my wife. I apologize. At any rate, we developed this building, and we've owned it for over 20 years. We have marketed this building for perhaps the last 3 years. It is a very special purpose building. It has multiple floor levels. It has multiple ceiling levels. It has tiered seating within the building. And there are very, very few users that could use this building. We are fortunate to have home furniture come to us. They're not paying us enough money for this building, but that's our problem and not your problem. I think that they would be a wonderful user for the city of Oakdale. They will generate a tax base for you. But what you need to do is you need to grant them 2 things. And these are 2 things that are critical for their business to be successful in this location. You need to give them the parking that they're requiring, and they know better than you, and I don't mean to say this in a demeaning fashion, but Home Furniture is a professional furniture company. They've been in business in Twin Cities about 45 years. They know the parking that they need, and it is very logical that they're requesting that parking to move forward. The other thing they need is what any retail business needs, and that's decent signage. So I request that you work with them in that regard. We have had very few alternate uses come to us for this building, and it may be years and years before we find another suitable user for this facility. With that, if anyone has any questions, I'm more than glad to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I guess I'll open it to anybody else. Anyone else have questions?
For the applicant, so after listening to your presentation, I'm coming up with now you're at 170,000 square foot building?
No. What we sent over to the city is about, and obviously with emergency emergency stairwells and things like that, that changes it slightly. What we sent over is about 156,000 square feet. That would be, first level would be about 100,000 square feet. Second level, 1,000 square feet, but that, or 100, about 56,000 square feet. That would be all the tall theaters in the back. It's the, every one of those tall theaters would be 2 levels. What I said is that the area in the front, those front 6 theaters that we're not gonna use ourselves, those are tall enough to be a 2-level office building. It's tall enough to be a 2-level restaurant. We're only thinking that it's probably gonna be a single-level tenant that we find, and it could be, there's 6 theaters, right? And each one of them, we could punch an entrance into the front of that building, the south side of the building. We could have 6 tenants in there that are 2,000 square feet each, or we could get 2 tenants that are 7,500 each. Or we could possibly find somebody that says, we want to put a 2-story in because it's tall enough. There's already a mezzanine in part of that area where they used to shoot, where the cameras were and stuff. That's at 13 feet, 5 inches. I can tell you every dimension of this building. I know it by heart. I've spent thousands of hours on it. There's a mezzanine where the projectors were held in the lower theaters that's at 13 feet 5 inches. And that's tall enough, has enough clearance that could be a 2-level restaurant, it could be a 2-level, so we don't know what our initial plan is to build out about 140-some thousand square feet of furniture and 15,000 feet of retail, whatever goes in there. It could be office, it could be retail, it could be restaurant. And those 7,500 square feet on both sides of our entrance would be another user. And we don't know what they're parking. If it was a hot tub store, it would probably fall under the large retail ticket like we would and only need the smaller amounts. If it's a office, then it's going to be 1 per 200. Just like, I think that's 1 per 200, isn't it, Emily?
Yep, it's based on square footage, but it's pretty close to that.
Yeah, office and retail are all 1 per 200 almost. Restaurants have a formula based on the number of chairs in the restaurant. But we know that on anything but the furniture portion of this, we've got to follow the rules. We have to have uses that are qualified in the zoning, and we have to provide the parking required for those. We're only looking for furniture, that part of the business, to be adjusted. And we cannot use what we're proposing. We can't use half of it, but only a few hours a year. It's ridiculous, the low amount of parking.
Okay, does anyone else have questions? Okay, the only question I've got for Emily is that based on what he's just said about the fact that the 325 wouldn't work for his initial phase 1, do you have any comments at that point?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the staff recommendation was based on information that we received in December from Home Furniture that did provide a couple of scenarios for what they might do with the building. So as Wayne has talked about, they're considering a lot of different things, and so there's a lot of possibilities. So it can't be completely open-ended, and so what staff is really focused on here is allowing Home Furniture to come to Oakdale, occupy the theater building, build it out to more square footage than it has right now, but then not reduce parking to such a degree that then, half of the parking could be available for a pad site, and then that limits future uses of the building for other types of retail, or even, as Wayne is talking about, other retail tenants in the Home Furniture building if the uses within that building change. So, there's kind of a lot of moving pieces with this, and if you increase intensity of one use, then you need parking for that use. And, so that's kind of a shifting factor. So what we did is we based it off of what they had submitted in December as some scenarios, and we felt that this provided enough flexibility for them to come to Oakdale and do that.
Yeah, my question though relates to my request for him is to 325 doesn't the one per 325 square foot was inadequate.
We don't know because we don't know who our tenants are gonna be yet.
Correct.
But if,
You didn't give me an exact number, so I'm trying to figure out what room or what options we have to
alright,
pick that one, or is that one off the table at this point?
yes, if you look at the home portion, that's probably gonna be around 146, 44, 42, we don't know. We haven't done our exiting solutions to understand how many more stairwells we have to have from the second level, where they're gonna be. Are they gonna be within the current building? Are they gonna be on the outside of the building? So that number can go up 2,000-3,000 feet either way. If we use the entire building for furniture and we built it at both the entire building, 2 levels, the building would go up to 175 or 170,000 feet, I think. It did all furniture, but we're not proposing that. The 1 per 325 might cut it. If we were to have 30,000 feet, which there's 7,500 square feet on both sides of the theater that we're gonna try to lease out. If those both went to 2 levels, that would be now 30,000 square feet. And you would have to look at that, that portion would require 150 parking spaces. Look at 1 for every 200 square feet, that could be 150 spaces. If we found that kind of a tenant, chances are we would be done building because we would probably have used up too much parking to have a pad site. So it's a moving target. The problem is if we end up with all low usage in our main building and it's only 1 floor, we cannot, under the proposed city 1 per 325 square feet, we cannot go to market with our product. We cannot, it takes 3 months, a really fast real estate deal is 3 months. The normal one is 6 months to a year. And we're supposed to go out to the market and show them our product and then tell them, no, we can't, we don't know if we can do it or not. It's gonna take us another 4 or 5 months to go through city approvals. They might want a parking study, they might want this. You're basically not allowing us to market our product. We can't. Just no broker is even gonna take it, represent it, because they don't have a product to sell. And no broker, the real estate business is your broker's here and your broker's here, and nobody's gonna wanna represent us. And on the other side of the coin, real estate brokers wanna be able to do deals. They don't wanna be sitting there saying, oh, maybe we could do something. That's not what they want. Here's the deal. We're gonna own, operate, and charge this property. The last thing we wanna do is create a problem for ourselves. We don't have any problems in any of our real estate. The 3 million square feet of property we have, 2.5 million square feet of that is retail. We have 0 problems in any location that we have, whether it be tenant occupied space, shopping center, we own shopping centers, we own freestanding retail, we own a variety of product. We're not afraid of this type of development. That's how we made our money. We're very good at it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think Home Furniture's request for parking is in the 4th paragraph of what they submitted to the Planning Commission, and it's fairly clear. It's 1 parking space for 400 one for 400 for the first 6,000 square feet of building, and one for 800 for the balance of the building.
Yes, that's in the motion at the back of the packet called option A.
Yes. And I ask that you support their motion.
Can I throw something in as to why that 400 is there for the smaller spaces?
Yes.
Okay, so when you have a smaller, there's mattress stores and things like that. And so what a lot of the communities try to do is cover the smaller spaces that have more opportunity to be repurposed into a different type of a category, to have a certain allowance so that every small store doesn't necessarily qualify as a furniture store. Then you go up to the larger number. Found that in quite a few different communities that we're at. Actually, this was in March 10th, Emily sent us a email that said, here's 3 different parking codes that we're considering for this. And they had the Bloomington one that was just redone. They had, I think Plymouth, and they might have had Apple Valleys. All 3 of these are 20-year-old codes, by the way, that aren't even. They were done 20 years ago when we had twice the traffic that we have today. So now we have even less. But these were examples that Emily had sent us that they were looking at something maybe around those. So we actually picked one of the 3 that she had suggested. If we were just doing this on our own, we would go for more what Coon Rapids or St. Cloud have, 1 per 1,000. We don't use that even, you know. But we went and we understand, and so we went to a standard, one of the options that they had actually thought that they would be considering. So that wasn't one that we came up with.
I got a couple of questions for you, Wayne.
Yes.
Okay. So to understand this, what you're suggesting and requesting is to really maximize your profit, to use the land in a way that you could build this other pod, okay? Because you're buying the whole thing, right? So you want to have that flexibility to maximize rentage to another subtenant in the building itself on each side, and then potentially do a pod down the other end of the parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's why you want the less space, because it gives you more room to build real estate that you can like. Is that correct?
Well, yes.
Okay. You've been doing a lot of talking, buddy. Okay. Right. So, second question is, do you know the current plans and what this building is going to look like when you're done? How far along are you with that? And is it going to look anything like what you showed us in Bloomington and the other areas, where you're going to do a massive improvement to the building itself?
Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to have any additional graphics on this meeting. We had a bunch of stuff. If you look at that, can we get back to that graphic that we did have, Emily? Can you flip that up to the furniture stores? The ones that we redid, Coles building. All right, so if you look down in the bottom right-hand corner, see that home with the glass on both sides of it?
Yep.
Okay, we're proposing to put 2 of those entrances on the building, one on the south side and one on the freeway side. So what you would see going down the freeway on those theaters that stick out the most, it's about 100. We're going to have an emergency exit there, so we'll have 16 feet of glass on that from the bottom floor all the way to the top of the building, and then we'll have our red. This will be a fake entrance along 694, just like in Coon Rapids. In Bloomington. Look at that bottom left-hand corner there.
Okay, so these plans are finalized, what you tell us?
They're not detailed because we don't know if we have a project yet. So exterior elevations, I can send you pictures, and they're gonna look very close to that. Structural drawings, in order to take out these theaters, okay, so every wall between every theater is a structural wall that goes.
You know, we really don't need to know that way.
Okay,
Right. So what I'm getting at, okay, is, you know, bottom line is you're guaranteeing us that should we proceed to go ahead and grant you your request, okay, that you're going to really improve the site and the appearance of this building. You're giving us that commitment.
I'll guarantee it.
All right, Emily, I have a question for you. With the increased retail down at the end of I would think Oakdale is going to benefit from that in terms of increased tax base, et cetera, correct? I mean, if this happens the way that he's describing it, we grant his request, Oakdale would have definite possibility of increased revenue. It's a big plus for us and for him. Is that correct?
So that area is planned to be a commercial area, and so we do want it to be active with a lot of different retail uses that the community accesses on a regular basis. We don't want just a giant warehouse in the future, but we want something that has a place for people to work, places for people to get services and jobs. And so yes, that is the intent of the city to have at that intersection, because that's really our downtown, you know, where we've got our commercial hub located. However, at this point, we haven't evaluated the impact of the costs, the infrastructure, any particular road improvements. MnDOT kind of came to us just very recently after seeing the news articles about this redevelopment happening and said that they want to look at reevaluating the access at 10th Street at the 694 ramp and possibly close that, because when the theater was originally constructed, they had issued a limited use permit to the city, meaning that that would be a temporary access point until a new northbound ramp was constructed that would go, rather than the loop that is there now, it would go straight north from 10th Street. And so there's land set aside for doing that. They didn't ever pursue that new configuration of the interchange, but they still have been experiencing some safety issues at that intersection and would like to explore closure of that. And so we also haven't studied the impact of that to see how that would affect the intersection at Helmo and 10th, pushing traffic then to being the main access to this commercial site off of Helmo, and Helmo has a curve there. There are some places where it's only a right in, right out. So there are a lot of unknowns that hopefully would become more certain as more information is gathered, as Wayne's plans coalesce. But to your question, yes, we want this to be a vibrant, vital commercial area, but we also need to understand how that works in the context with other land uses, infrastructure, circulation, and those sorts of things.
So you're saying there's additional risks that haven't been pointed out in this document if we approve Wayne's request in terms of our cost to support his development without any guarantees from him as to what type of development. So it leaves us at risk. If he chooses the wrong type of development, it could cost us money in infrastructure, potentially close down, have an impact to close down an exit ramp or an entrance. Is that what you're saying, or no?
I'd like to address that, please, sir. Okay. This issue from the MnDOT has been, that came up 20 years ago when we were to build the theater. I mean, there is an interstate exit ramp. I don't see how the MnDOT could possibly reconfigure that interchange at this point in time. And even though there's newspaper articles, they might have brought up questions about it. But I think that this is by far the best use that the city could get out of this property, and it would increase your tax base. We are very frustrated as owners in that we have worked with the Planning Commission for 3 years, and we considered alternate uses, and to give the prospective retail user half of what he's asking for doesn't make it economically feasible in most cases to move forward. I don't see any big interstate changes that are likely at this location?
They did just complete a very big, renovation to that exit. I mean, they just completed it, right?
MnDOT has said that they don't have plans to reconfigure the interchange at this time or any time in the near future. However, their policy is to not have direct access to private sites from interstate off-ramp intersections. So they've got some concerns about how that intersection operates. Those may be able to be addressed in other ways, but MnDOT has raised this with us, that they control that area around that intersection and that they would like to see it closed.
So they might require us to change the current exit of this property, what you're saying, which is directly across, because I'm there all the time, directly across from where you exit northbound, on 694.
Yes, so that area, that access would close. That's the one that MnDOT controls. The site does have access off of Helmo and 12th Street. So there would be access. It wouldn't be directly from that intersection there.
Yeah, I'm going to draw it back to where I was leading quite a while back. I try to create a dialogue between interested parties on what option B was, but my reading of what's going on here is option B is no longer really viable. That's my assessment right now as a committee member. Emily, do you have any comments further on that, or do I close the meeting at this point? Go
I didn't. Dallas, what you just said, that option B isn't or is viable?
It's not viable according to what I've heard between the two parties of Emily and Lance. So option B is not really on the table as something to go forward with.
So staff is still recommending option B because the plans that Home has put forward have changed a number of times. And so we wanted to move ahead with something that was responding to what they were interested in doing. Yes, they could do something different in the future, and we could consider that. We're not closing the door to that or even a future pad site. We just want more specific, certain information that can be evaluated and assessed to ensure that there aren't any unintended consequences that occur on that property or on the adjacent properties or the circulation system in that area. So we're proposing a more conservative approach, which is a minor modification to the zoning ordinance to allow for less parking for furniture stores, but not to the degree that Home has requested at this time.
This would come into review as this goes forward, as his plans cement up, right?
We can definitely look at this again with new information, yes. This doesn't close the door to that, but it doesn't leave it wide open either.
So this just makes it so he can go forward with his plan, and then when it gets a little closer, when he needs a little more cement on what actual plans he has, we can revisit this and actually change it at that point.
That's correct. And with the new information that Wayne has brought up just today that we hadn't talked about before, between now and the city council meeting, if there is an adjustment that may be reasonable to the staff alternative with new information, we could bring that as another option to the city council. So what the Planning Commission is being asked to do tonight is to consider Home's request and all of the information they've provided. Staff felt it was important that the commission understand that if parking is reduced significantly, that could restrict the future uses on this site and possibly have implications beyond what we would really want to see there. But move this forward and have Home come to Oakdale. So if the commission wants to either say, we're convinced by Home's argument and we think that that is the way to go, you can recommend that to the city council. You could say, we understand staff's concern, but there might need to be a little bit more wiggle room there to accommodate some of the things that Home is pursuing. And so you could make a recommendation to the council to that effect.
So if I may say a few things about this, to Emily's point, I respect staff's concern and I understand where staff is coming from. However, I respectfully disagree with staff's concern. My issue with it is home has not even come to Oakdale, and we're already concerned about what happens when home leaves. And I think Wayne mentioned it when he said that the risk is on home. At the end of the useful life of that building, if and when that business ever does decide to leave, the market will dictate what happens with that site. If we've changed this zoning text amendment or ordinance, and it doesn't support a 1 to 200 parking ratio for retail business, that's reflected in the sales price of that building. And it's going to drive the price down, and home is going to have to sell it at a lower cost so that whoever comes in can buy it, demo the building, and redevelop the site into something that will support that 1 to 200. It sounds like the one for 325 doesn't work. From my position, I'm in support of Home's request.
I would agree that Wayne has a pretty strong, compelling argument, and I think that we really do need to step up and consider making some changes because I don't think it's completely unrealistic. And I think you're right. He's got as much skin in the game as we do, and I'd like to see this move forward. We certainly don't want to lose this opportunity for Oakdale because I think it would be a major improvement to the site, without a doubt. It's a big plus.
And to think of the other uses that could go in here, I mean, it's, I work for a large fitness company. We're starting to look at movie theaters across the country to redevelop, and it's tough. It is a difficult use to repurpose, and the fact that we have a retailer who is well known in the community, is literally our next door neighbor, and they want to relocate into our market and put millions of dollars into this real estate to improve it. I think this is a very, to me, this is a very reasonable request that we should rather recommend approval.
Are there any other commissioners with questions? None, I close the public hearing, bring it back to the commissioners. Any final questions before we go to a vote?
Yeah, I would like to have Emily explain, in respect for Emily, because this is the first time I've ever faced this situation, because you've always had great recommendations. So explain what our options are here, Emily.
Sure, I appreciate that. And, again, with the commission and what we've gone through before, again, going back to that zoning pyramid, we're in this green area where there's a lot of discretion, and we need to consider a lot of different information. We're not applying the law, we're creating law, we're creating policy. And so it isn't as straightforward as most of the applications that the Planning Commission considers, where we're simply saying, do you meet the requirements? If so, we recommend approval. So it's healthy to have this kind of robust discussion and considering lots of different factors. So Wayne and Home Furniture has done a good job expressing what their interests are and how their operations work. From the city side, we need to consider other factors. We need to consider long-term of a site. We need to consider the context and the infrastructure. And to what Chris was saying, Oakdale did have that experience with the Oakdale Mall, where use became derelict, vacant, not invested in, and I don't think that there's much of a comparison between the owner of that mall and Home Furniture, and I'm not saying that, but what happened, the end result was the city had to step in, and so it did become our risk. We bought the mall, we tore it down, we cleared the site, and we did the redevelopment to bring in the Waters, Hy-Vee, and Hardee's to that area. So, and we did that in 2008 at the height of the recession. So that was something that became the city's responsibility because that site didn't work. The market didn't come in and fix that problem. The city had to do that. And so that's another reason why we're just wanting to make sure that we make the commission and council aware that this may present an issue in the future. Everything may work out fine, but we're just recommending that we take an incremental approach, get home here, see how it operates, find out who they're talking to with new users, do some infrastructure analysis, figure out the traffic and circulation, and then revisit this if needed, if there's new information.
Question before us is basically a statement on a recommendation to the city council. The city council will have the final call. I have some other options to give the city council, but I'm not positive of that. So, are there any other questions from the commissioners? I'm not sure exactly how to go vote on this. It's an A or B question. Do you vote for the A side or the B side? So I guess we'll just go by waving of hands on statement. Do you vote for A or B? A? Call the motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of option A. All those in favor?
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Yep, why don't folks keep their hand raised so that we can actually do a good count there. So it looks like we've got 6 ayes
In the chat for you.
on that.
Congratulations, Wayne.
So just to confirm, that was Commissioners Pearson, Boulian, Campbell, Stolarski, Millis, and Diatta voting for option A. Okay.
Right.
All right.
We
Thank
make
you.
a motion for B or just leave it?
Make a motion for B.
Okay, I will make a motion to recommend approval of option B. All those,
Favor? That was Marty Jorgensen, positive for that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Commission. This was a good discussion.
I believe we have to take the nays still on it.
Sure.
Do we have to take the nays on it, or do we just?
As I stated into the record, the vote for B was Mark Jorgensen.
Right, we should have taken A's and nays for both of them, though. According to Robert's Rules of Order. It's okay.
Okay. The next order of business then is a vote for new officers for the coming year. Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Do we have a nomination for Chair? You can self-nominate on this.
You'll excuse me, I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
I want that glass of wine he had.
Okay, again, I'll call for nominations for Chair for the Planning Commission, and you may self-nominate.
I nominate myself, Emily Millis.
Second for Emily.
Second that.
Any other nominations? None, I close nominations and move to a vote. All those in favor of Emily Millis for Chair for next year, the Planning Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
I see none opposed, so. Thank you, Emily.
Congratulations.
Next is the Vice Chair position. Again, self-nominate. So are there any nominations for Vice Chair?
Motion to nominate Commissioner Diatta for position of Vice Chair.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
make motion to nominate Dallas as the chair, that vice chair.
If I might, I'll decline on
No.
that.
You'll decline? Okay.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I close nominations and ask for a vote on Commissioner Yaya Diatta to be Vice Chair for the coming year. In favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None? Congratulations, Yaya, you are now Vice Chair.
Thank you.
business tonight is the informational item of planning and development update from Emily.
Yep, and I'll just be super brief because we've had a good long meeting. Just Eagle Point Elementary is starting construction. They've been doing foundation work and we should start seeing walls going up over there. The auto zone should be open soon. I don't have an opening date for them, but the building official did let me know that she'd issued a certificate of occupancy that lets them stock the store. So there will be items there available for purchase very soon. So, and we will have a meeting, as Wayne alluded to, on February 4th. So we'll look forward to seeing you then, either in person or virtually again.
Good.
All right, thank you.
I motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Speak well.
Thank you, everyone.